Welcome to episode 11 of Eat It, where Rick Rosner and I try to answer a question that comes to from the viewing audience. AirU.tv is the website that will have this episode and previous episodes if you want to go see it, see them. And if you want to write to the show and maybe have your question read by Rick, write to us at info@airu.tv. AirU stands for Addicts in Recovery United, because if you're addicted to something, there is hope. And the message is to give hope to the hopeless and empower the powerless, because addiction is a scourge across this country. And there are solutions, but what works for me may not work for you. And what works for you may not work for me. But find what works for you. So I'm going to bring Rick on now, and he's going to tell us what question we're going to try to answer today. Hi, Rick.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I went back to sleep. I just woke up, but that'll work. It'll be okay.
Okay. All right. So, do you drink coffee?
I've got some. You know how the whole protein thing, especially for old guys such as us, so now I drink frickin' half coffee, half protein shake.
Oh,
which is kind of gross, but I mean, I don't know.
Is it cold or warm?
It's cold.
It's cold. Okay, so the caffeine is in there for the pick me up.
Not enough, but
yeah. I got an espresso machine so that I have a cup of coffee with a little bit of espresso in it, and that seems to. So I don't have too much coffee.
Yeah,
I can get jittery.
Right. Yeah, my heart will go gallop a little bit if I do 4 cups or more.
Okay. So what's the question of the day?
It's from Dave Bryant. And he says, "Dear us, my question relates to free will. I, for one, do not believe that free will exists. The notion that you have access to something that is independent of causal factors has never made sense to me. The evidence against it seems to compound with time. I was curious what you guys' stance is on free will." Okay. And I agree with Dave that I don't believe that we have some magical juice that somehow we can turn to that makes decisions for us independent of anything. I think this makes this idea of free will. Well, there's a couple things that I think it comes from. One is the completely determinate universe, which makes people nervous. There was an idea in classical physics that if you knew the state of the universe at any time, then every subsequent moment would be predetermined by that, because, like clockwork. Right. But then quantum mechanics came along and said there's some built-in fuzziness and indeterminateness where you could never, that doesn't, you can't ever determine the exact state of things, and you can't ever predict exactly. But I think the idea that we would be part of a clockwork universe where we would have no free will, that it would all be determined by like clockwork, or like a bunch of ping pong, or billiard balls that move in exact ways, or if you knew the positions and velocities of the billiard balls at any one time, you'd know every next moment out to infinity. There's also a thing with Descartes, who I think kind of thought, now I don't know philosophy, but I think he thought there were kind of 2 worlds. There was the material world, and then there was the world of consciousness, of your mind, that kind of existed on another plane, independent of but linked to the material world. And as Dave suggests, there's more and more evidence that, that our consciousness resides in our brain, that it's the product of understandable physics, that there's no magical brain consciousness juice that, that makes our minds work any different from anything else in the universe. So instead of free will, I believe in the importance of and the idea of informed will. It's bad when you don't know why you're making the decisions you make. But the decisions you make are, as Dave suggests, I believe, the product of the contents of your memory, of your senses, of your mind, your brain, which is trying to get you to, according to brain science, your brain exists to set you up for the next moment. That, like, you gather all this sensory information, you run it up against what you know about the world, and then you make your next moves. And obviously you want your brain to give you the best possible chances of making decisions that are in your best interest. And informed will is the idea that you know why your brain is making the decisions that it does, especially in situations where it maybe doesn't have your best interest at heart. And I think that those conflicts between your best interests and what your brain wants are most apparent with regard to sex, because we evolved from billions of generations of creatures who had sex to make the next generation. We are biased towards wanting to do it. And that, I think, sex is often at cross purposes with our best interests as individuals. If our best interest as individuals is survival, so sex makes us and other creatures make decisions that are counter to individual survival. You think of all the species, especially like insect species, where the male mates with the female, and then the female turns around and eats the male's head.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the males were interested in individual survival, they would not mate because it leads to their deaths.
Right.
And so, I think we should be skeptical of decisions around mating, around sex, because like I like looking at butts at the gym. They're, depending, on the hours and stuff, there are a lot of women with tight workout clothing, showing their butts. And I have to remind myself, don't be a creepy jerk and look at the butts. You can always go home and look at hundreds and thousands of butts on the internet if you need to look at butts. But butts are endlessly compelling to look at, which is dumb. Butts have nothing to do with bettering my life with my survival. It's all, due to pre-programmed horniness.
And pre-programmed, you're assessing the characteristics that would allow the woman to survive and the child to survive. So, their primitive brain is assessing whether or not mating with that individual would perpetuate the species.
Like your butts have a lot of information about the person's reproductive fitness.
Exactly.
And like makeup, facial when people put on mascara and lipstick and a lot of that has to do with maximizing sexual signals, and those signals again relate to reproductive fitness.
Right.
That if you use stuff to make your eyes look bigger, your eyes are an indicator of sexual interest.
Right.
And lips, giving yourself red lips, it gives you looks like youth and vitality.
Nice. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but it makes perfect sense to me. To get back to the question.
Boy, one more thing, the feminist perspective on high heels is that they make it harder to run away. So it makes it easier for guys to chase you down, which, is probably true, but sad.
But it also has a butt effect.
It
Yeah.
has a not just a butt effect, it activates all your entire leg.
Yeah.
Makes you tighten your butt, you tighten your quads, and particularly you tighten your calves.
Yes.
And it makes you look like, more physically fit.
Right. Right. A question of free will, from my perspective, I believe in forces beyond my control, and that they are the predominant forces in the universe. And so my will is fairly insignificant, but I also believe in the ability for individuals to raise their consciousness. So if you're operating from a primitive type of sense of consciousness, maybe an insect that had a higher level of consciousness would say, hey, I don't want my head bitten off. But they can't raise their vibration, they can't raise their consciousness to that level. But humans seem to have been endowed with the ability to raise their consciousness, to raise their sense of awareness of things that go beyond just the primitive instincts, so that you can learn to maybe not stop the stimulus of the instinct, but to control your response to it. Because
Yeah, and I think informed will is part of that. If you know that you have primitive instincts that make you want to do certain stuff, if knowing about those, weighing on your decisions, might help you make better decisions.
right. So, and you brought up quantum mechanics and the inherent fuzziness that's related to that. So there is an inability to predict the precise outcome of things, and they've set up experiments to kind of prove that point. Um, and I think that so I do believe in the ability to raise your own consciousness and to make different choices that affect your behavior, and that you can. If you have a compulsion, which, like, what I would say is, I surrendered my power of choice when I bent my knee to the tyranny of addiction, but I regained my power of choice. And what's the power of choice if not free will? And I think that the free will to choose is a gift that was given to me. I squandered it and I regained it. And the ability to choose rather than to a predetermined outcome, I think of it as old programming that was established merely when I was unconscious of the programming itself. And when I became conscious of that programming, I was able to alter it and establish new neural networks in my brain. And at first, they were scratchy. They didn't play very good music, and it was uncomfortable to go down that path rather than the old one, well grooved. But the music that it played had negative consequences for me and for others. So the new groove, if you go down it, and it's an effort of will to go down that, to choose that neural network, that path, and that neural network will form, and the groove will get smoother, and the music that it will play will be much more sweet than ever before. And so you have a reward at the end of that, and that you see that your behavior is better. The universe reflects it back to you immediately if you're paying attention, if you're aware. And this will make you want to choose that path again and again and again. But it takes practice, it takes work. And if you can accomplish it over time, then your behavior will change. And I believe this is an exercise of your will. And I don't believe that I was programmed to raise my consciousness, but maybe I was. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I believe that I was lucky. I was fortunate to have experiences and survive them long enough to raise my consciousness.
So my family is lucky in that we generally don't have issues around substance abuse, but we have issues around other stuff.
All right.
And so, so whether I can exert my will over substances is a matter of luck in my case, that I don't have to, exercise discipline to avoid substance abuse. But there's other stuff going on. There's other bad behavior I have that can be seen as a failure of will. That, like, you know that I've been writing a book for forever, and I my wife has sit down and write will. She cranked out a book in a matter of months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken me years, and I lack the discipline to do that. And then on a more trivial, and you know, that's excuse making. I should be able to develop the discipline to do it. And sometimes, yeah, I can do it. But like it's not consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little bit on the spectrum, I would say. And spectrum people have this thing called stimming, where to focus when you get tired. You know, and I don't know if it's just people on the spectrum, but that you need stuff to keep you awake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Stimming is ST as in
STIM,
yeah.
stim.
Stim.
And so you like some people rock,
Yes.
and I'll jiggle my leg. I think you know a lot of people jiggle their legs, and I will attack my body. Now I used to bite my nails,
Mm-hmm.
but right now my nails are in great shape. But I pick at myself. Like I look for like you know zits and clogged pores and ingrown hairs, and I attack them and I make sores where there shouldn't be sores, which is uh, kind of gross. Like I have this sore on. I remember when this thing started. I was in a meeting at the show I used to work on, and I looked down and there was a little fucking zit on my arm, and I popped it, and I started picking at it, and that was probably close to 30 years ago.
Oh.
And then I had one on my head for a decade. You know, I go at it, and it started as a clogged pore, squeezed out a little, you know, zit juice, but then I couldn't stop attacking the sore, and I'd cover it with makeup. And finally, after 10 or 12 years, I managed to leave it alone long enough for it to heal up and go. But like, you know, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I might sit there and just like start let my hands, and it's a gross habit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but and it's you know it's a failure of will to you know get myself to keep my hands by my side and just to force myself to go back to sleep.
Right. Well, it's the failure of will. Reacting to that phrase, and because it's a self-punishing phrase, like I lack, I'm bad, I'm not good enough, or that kind of thing. And what I have found is to be more gentle towards yourself is a good way to rephrase things. And I used to have contempt for positive affirmations, but I no longer do because I found that they work. We had a dog that we used to worry, a hotspot, we called it, and so it wouldn't let it heal. And so there is something that's pretty natural about doing that. And as a child, you have to be told to leave it alone. It's not a natural thing that many people are will pick at things, and so you learn this behavior of leaving it alone and allowing it to heal. So this is another example of learned behavioral change that you apply. And if in your case you're not applying it, I wouldn't say that you're a bad person or that you lack something. It's that there's something going on that hasn't been addressed that you're not conscious of. And once you become aware of it, you'll find that I used to crack my knuckles, and I don't do that anymore. And why did I crack my knuckles? Well, as a child, I didn't know. If you asked me, I didn't know. But what I was I was anxious. And so it was a way of me relieving the anxiety, reducing stress is another way. But it was basically a defense mechanism. And so if something was making me anxious, then I would crack my knuckles. And when I achieved a certain level of awareness that, hey, that's what it is, and calming down was the answer, not cracking the knuckles, like the anxiousness. So I'm kind of coming down on the side of, yes, we have free will. but we often don't use it. We're often unaware of why we don't use it, because it whatever it is, we have not yet brought it up to the level of awareness, and we don't
Well,
know.
yeah, I'm a big fan of being aware of why we do everything we do. And you can't be aware of everything, but you can, do some work and figure out.
Right.
Like I, I first got sent to a psychiatrist when I was 6 years old. My parents went away for a trip. My dad had to go to, in the olden days, like you couldn't, if you owned a business, like he owned a ladies' ready to wear store,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to fly to New York 5 times a year, and the lines of clothing would show him the stuff, and he'd order the stuff. And then
Right.
once a year, my mom would go with him to New York City, and they'd have a week, and they'd make it a vacation, along with buying the new, and they'd go to plays, and they'd go out to dinner, and they left me with this old babysitter who scared me. And I started turning and spinning in circles to make, because that's the way clocks went. And I wanted time to go as fast as possible for them to get back. So they
That's
went on
a
this trip.
level of awareness that I didn't have at 6. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so they freaking came home to find this 6-year-old kid spinning in circles and chanting to God. Because I was worried that God, I was saying, I love God, I love God, I love God, I love God. I was afraid I was pissing off God somehow, and I needed to. And so anyway, I was kind of a mess, and that was the first time I got sent to a psychiatrist. And since then, I've gone to a bunch of them. My wife and I have been in couples counseling for 30 years, just mostly because we have really good insurance that lets us be in counseling. It's not because we're always at odds with each other. It's
Sure.
because we go once a month, and it's a good way to get checked in and everything, on the.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that.
But because of this, because of the years of being, going to shrinks, and also I've been trying to write books, that are partly autobiographical. I'm transparent to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know what's up with me to a pretty large extent, but a lot of people aren't. And I think it's helpful to be transparent to yourself, to know why you do what you do.
Yes.
And we externalize will to make us do the things that we don't necessarily want to do. We have laws and penalties, and those laws help us. Don't drive like an asshole all the time. There's a risk that you'll get hit with a $300 ticket. And that helps us not drive like assholes. My wife has surprised me in recent years in that she has not been exerting the force of disapproval on my will. Like, I've been taking a ton of naps lately, and my wife does not go, fucking get out of bed and do something. She doesn't do it. She goes, what is that? Like, she'll comment, like, that was like, isn't this your second nap? And but she's not giving me shit about it.
Right.
Which I appreciate the grace, right? That she allows me. At the same time, it's like, boy, somebody should tell me to get my shit together.
Yeah, and one of the things, like when we're talking about self-awareness, I always think of Buddha, and Buddhism talks in terms of enlightenment, and we were talking now about self-enlightenment, and this kind of concept. I have long given up the idea that I will become enlightened anytime soon, but I do believe that I can walk a path that leads me towards enlightenment. And the idea of needing external approval or disapproval is become less and less necessary for me. Because my inner gauge and my inner resonance of my behavior seems to be giving me better guidance than any outside. A wife is close as you can get to someone who knows you intimately and can tell you something that you need to hear. A best friend can do it. some very close acquaintances, perhaps spiritual advisor of whatever sort, they can give you guidance. And then you have to check with that inner resonance to see, does that really describe me? Is that really the source? Because what we're trying to get at is, why do I do this?
Yeah.
And
So my wife and I have been married almost 35 years, and we each have a model of the other one, why they do the things they do. And I know what my wife's model is of me, or at least some of the generalities of it. She
yes,
thinks that, yeah, I'm on the spectrum and that I see things in terms of black and white, that I'm very concerned with fairness, that, I get really pissed off if I think I'm being treated unfairly. And all this stuff is true to some extent, but then I'm also thinking, but I'm more than that.
hmm, of course you are. Yes. Now, some of these things, as our vocabulary is limited to describe certain things, but some of it is also the level of communication. It's like if I use a word and you and I understand the word the same way, then we're on the same wavelength. But if I use a word and you understand it a different way, then we're cross purposes, and there's a lack of understanding, a lack of connection. And so, how do you choose to connect to someone? And what I tell myself every morning of every day now is uh, to meet people where they're at and to say what they can hear. Because for most of my adult life, I said what I thought was the truth, and that was the most important thing to me, was being true. The accuracy was incredibly important to me. If the statement was inaccurate, when I was younger, I was just shocked all the time that people were lying. Well, they weren't lying. They just didn't understand the truth. And it was their best representation of something. And they would misremember an event and say, tell the event. And I would say, that's not what happened. And, I would be stunned and confused. Um, and the first thought was that they're lying, but of course they weren't lying. That's the way they remembered it. And so now I'm trying to be more gentle towards myself and towards others, and thinking that in terms of these things, some people are going to not understand certain words that I use in the way that I mean them. So I have to kind of figure out, what can they hear? And it's my way of connecting to them, which is useful for both of us.
Yeah, I tell my wife to lie to me. My wife plays devil's advocate. She thinks it's important to, like, I'll tell her an idea I have, and she'll tell me 3 reasons why that's not a great idea. And I'm like, don't do that. Pretend I'm a fragile flower
Mhm.
and I only can hear good stuff. So, like, before you tell me the bad stuff, start up with a compliment about what,
Yes. What a great idea that is.
yeah,
Oh, here's 3 things that might happen that we have to think about.
yeah. And,
And
and, and like, I am a fragile flower. Like, I say, pretend I'm an actor because, every actors are kind of fragile, can be kind of fragile creatures. Um, I doubt Meryl Streep is fragile. If
right.
she
But
she
who
goes,
knows?
how's this, and she does it. She runs a couple lines, and if you said, well, that kind of sucks, and she'd be like, it wouldn't wreck her. She'd be like, she'd either think, oh, I guess it does kind of suck, or she'd be like, F you, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like, but if you're an actor who's struggling to get their
Yeah.
first part, then that person probably needs some support, some bucking up to go out there and you know, do 50 auditions before you book anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, treat me like that. Buck
Yes.
me up.
Yes. Exactly. Buck me up. The stories of Narnia. Buck me up, Susan. Buck up, Susan. But we had a goddaughter who lived in Paris and was fluent in French, and I called her fleur délicate, a delicate flower. And then I realized that I was too. I didn't respond I took things as criticism that weren't meant to be criticized. And I also um, took a criticism to heart, and whether it was true or not. And I had to learn to trust my inner resonance. If someone said something, you're X, you're Y, I grew up with a mother who always said that, and as a child, I would realize that sometimes she wasn't right. It was like that. I'm not like that, but I would get labeled this or that pretty much on a daily basis, weekly, certainly. And, so I learned to kind of test these labels or these criticisms and see if they were accurate. Um, and this has kind of given me a sense of empowerment to know when a criticism is valid or not, and to take the criticism as education. Try to. I'm a work in progress in this regard, but and when it's false, then I don't have to respond with anger. I just have to let it flow. I call it the neutrino effect, where there's a vibe coming at me that's negative and it's inaccurate and it's not appropriate, it's not right in any sense of the word. It doesn't, but if it's a neutrino, it's not going to interact with me.
You're right. A neutrino can tear through 1,000,000 miles
Yeah.
of matter without running into anything.
So I try to turn people's vibes that they're giving me into neutrinos. Because a vibe is, what is it, a wave or a particle? And the answer is it's both.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's another part of informed will, where you look at what your brain is telling you. Like, your brain is a bunch of different voices.
Yes.
And you're like, well, the horny voice might not be. I shouldn't grab that butt. I shouldn't stare at that butt. Even though my brain wants me to, just freaking do your set, walk away.
Your brain wants you to.
But it also applies to other people, developing a knowledge of why other people might not, why they tell you the things they do.
Right. And that is meeting them where they're at. And often I can show compassion towards those people once I realize, oh, they said that because they're hurting or they're having a bad day, or I can refrain from judging them in the harsh way that I used to. The harshest judgment is directed towards myself.
Yeah, it's crazy that how familiar we all are now with the term passive aggressive.
Yes,
which is somebody who's outwardly sweet, but everything they say is loaded with I guess you could call it microaggressions. Again, we've become very familiar with this stuff,
yes.
And these are good tools for dissecting other people. There is a group of individuals who will always buck you up and compliment you, and that's AI, where if you chat with AI will always tend to kiss your ass and say, well, that's a really good idea, and how about this? But before they go the how about this, they always start with a compliment.
Yes.
And this went
There's
on.
been a couple of articles recently about how people are having bad effects because of that, the interactions with that.
Yeah, because you can get in a loop with the AI where if you're, should I kill myself? And AI is like, well, yeah, you should. And here's a couple ways to do it. And that's a bad loop to be in. And it took months and months of AI doing it for people to realize this is what's going on, that the AI has been trained to kiss your ass because you want to, AI is super friendly and you want to be friends with it because they always have a nice thing to say to you. It took me a few sessions with Claude AI to realize, wait, no, not every idea of mine is freaking great, but Claude is saying that it is.
Right. And so, this is, again, getting external approval when what we really need to focus on is internal acceptance. And when we achieve that, again, work in progress, when we can accept ourselves for who we are and what we are, with assets and liabilities, with things that we're good at, very good at, and things that we're not so good at, or in my case, what when you talk about a handyman, whatever the opposite of handy is, that's me. I used to, and I can still remember in school when we were asked to fold and paste, and everybody else seemed to be able to do it, and mine was always off. And so there was paste on my desk, and like this. So I got into my mind that if I did something with my hands, it would be messy, or if I was trying to fix something, I would break it because I would press too hard, so the pencil would snap, and these types of things affected me into my adulthood. And
So when I was a kid, I would build plastic models, cars and rocket ships. The glue back then would get you high.
yeah,
I didn't mean to get high, but if I spent 2 hours like this gluing, I would come to dinner all effed up.
mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, maybe I would start by making clean, joints, but by after 2 hours, I'd be like, ah, and I'd always get like gluey fingerprints on the car windshield. It made me very annoyed. But there's the serenity prayer, which is, grant me the serenity to
Except the things
not,
that cannot change.
can't change. And like we all get mad at inanimate objects. Like my wife and I have
You tell on something, yeah.
Yeah, well, we have a refrigerator that pisses us off. I don't know what the deal is, but it's harder to find stuff in this refrigerator than previous refrigerators we've had. And
It's a selfish refrigerator. It doesn't want to give you
yeah.
what you want.
So yeah, you get pissed. certain objects are try to F with you, and you're like, get the hell out of here, thing,
Yeah.
But the knowing where what your will can do and where it stops is another part of informed will.
Yes.
And there's a betting epidemic, wagering in the U.S. right now. There are more and more ways to bet on stuff. It's a huge industry, and betting is, among other things, it's in trying to impose your will on the future. Say, well, I've thought about it, or I have a hunch, and I think this is the way this event that hasn't happened yet is going to turn out.
Right.
And
I would think that if I was watching, that my team would win. And if I didn't watch and they lost, I said, see?
no, I have the opposite. I have to turn the channel.
Uh-huh.
Because if I watch, I turn on the Dodgers. And they're a great team to root for because they've won more games since 2010 than any other major league team. Now I've probably jinxed them. Today's the first day of the playoffs. So sorry, Dodgers. But I turn on the Dodgers and they got a 5-run lead, and then 5 minutes later it's down to 2 runs. I'm like, I have to turn it off before.
Yeah. I've caught myself doing that kind of behavior, and it's another delusion. But once we rip off one veil of delusion, there's always another. We're never done tearing the veils of delusion from our eyes. We see further, we see more clearly, but there's still more work to be done. But this is where we get back into the free will kind of thing. Is that, do you have, is it all predetermined? Was I supposed to rip that veil of delusion off, or did I do the work that I needed to do because I chose to? And it's been my experience that my choice is the primary driver in my life, and that I have had, maybe you go back to quantum mechanics, maybe there's a little variable in there. Am I choosing as a particle? Am I choosing as a wave? I don't know. But what I'm doing is making a conscious choice. And it's based on influence, no doubt about it. But it's also based on my willingness to accept teachings from the wiser past, the people that have taught things in the past that are just as true today. And to those people that are more in tune with that wisdom than I am, to try to surround myself with them as much as I can, so that I can not censor myself when I try to meet people where they're at. If they're vibrating at a higher level and their consciousness is higher than mine, that association can lift my consciousness and raise my vibration. And if I'm around a lot of people, we used to say this, you don't think you're an alcoholic if you're surrounding yourself with other alcoholics, because everybody's drinking just the way you are. And so, it's your surroundings too, and you can choose to change your surroundings. It took me a
So,
while to go to a baseball game because I associated a baseball game with having a beer.
so I don't have that many friends, and the friends I had were not elevating me. Like I do this show on Pod TV where I scream at my Trumpy friend, and he screams at me. And after years of this, I'm like, this was supposed to be entertaining. I don't think it is. I think it's a bummer for viewers, and it's certainly not good for either of us. So I'm like, we can't do this anymore. So I'm rejiggering the show. Less, little to no politics. We talk about stuff that where we can agree, and we also finally started booking female models because my friend's an artist, and now if you want to watch Naked at Night on Pod TV, we are going to try to have a nice looking woman being drawn by Lance, and there's going to be more drawing, more women in the studio, and less politics.
Well, that sounds like a more fun show.
Yeah, and it doesn't flood my body, I hope, with stress hormones.
Yes. I always said that if it wasn't for cortisol, I'd have no soul at all.
Yeah, cortisol is this when you're under stress, your body floods you with certain chemicals.
Yeah.
I already had one blocked. I've been on an adrenaline blocker for close to 30 years for blood pressure. And it's good that it stops me from getting as revved up as I would otherwise get. So it's another way to, you're externalizing will, where I can't calm myself down as much as I'd like to be able to, but I can eat a pill that helps with it.
Well, if you go to airu.tv, which is scrolling across the bottom of your screen now, there's a season that was called Calm Down with James Eade. And I had a lot of people, including yoga teachers and therapists, who would come on and share how some of the tools and techniques that have been passed down to us through millennia, and they really developed the science of how to still your mind so that you can meditate and do these things that when I first started to meditate, I had this inability to achieve stillness, to achieve quietness, because there's always thoughts that were intruding. And, so I actually hired this person at Ananda, which is a community here, also many other places, that teaches these types of things. And I've taken a lot of courses from them and had individual sessions, in this case, to learn how to meditate. Well, I still meet with the woman, but we don't talk about meditation anymore. We're talking about different things. But she taught me how to quiet my mind. And so this is just me being open. When someone said, this place can help teach you, my first instinct was to say no. I had contempt prior to investigation.
Yeah, you use that phrase a lot, which is sometimes we'll hear an idea and we'll be like, that sounds like bullshit. But and sometimes it's bullshit because you've run into similar stuff before.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't know anything about it. You just think it's BS because of some aspect, maybe the person who's pitching it to you,
right?
Be the subject matter.
Right. Scam artist is
like I know, like I don't believe in naturopathy. What do you, the stuff where you, there's the stuff where the diluted, anyway, there's a whole area of fake medicine that I've investigated that I know is bullshit.
Yeah, I've never tried it, so I don't know anything about it.
But anyway, I'm probably bad at calming down, but I'm really good at simulating calm. I know some tricks where if on a blood pressure machine, I know how to beat the machine. Thing one is I get my arm up here. I measure my blood pressure up here because it's lower up here above my heart than it is down here below my heart because of gravity. There's more, pressure down here. Also, I unbutton my pants. If my pants are too tight and they're pushing on my body, that increases blood pressure. And then I control my breathing, and then I drop my head back. I roll my eyes. All that lets me beat the machine. Have I made myself calmer? Maybe a little bit, but
Yeah.
my wife doesn't know how to take naps. She's bad at napping. I'm
Uh-huh.
good at nap. I know how to do it. I
Yeah.
take off my shoes. I
Yeah.
take off most of my clothes. I get under the covers. I get situated where the pillow hits my head correctly.
Right.
Um, she doesn't do that. She gets on the bed with her shoes on, big clunky tennis shoes, and she curls up or the couch, and she's given herself no chance. Her feet are going to wake her up because they're going to be uncomfortable after 5 minutes.
Yeah. 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 And so the first thing that I would say is that there are a couple of things that you talked about, like unbuttoning your pants. That could be a trick, but the calming your breath, that's a tool. That's one that I've learned. I've been taught it, and I've learned it, and I use it all the time because 24 hours don't go by without me getting anxious or agitated about something. And my awareness, though, is much more keen now than it was even 10 years ago. And so I think about, okay, my shoulders are a little clenched or a little, hunched. What's it? My body's telling me something. My body's giving me signals that I didn't used to pay attention to at all. And so if I take a deep breath, miraculously, my shoulders drop. So all of a sudden, the mind can start to calm the body, and the body can calm the mind. And these are things that I taught, and there are various tools that you can learn. And again, what works for me may not work for you, but the breathing has been a real gift for me, being aware of my breath. Because as I said before, when I'm anxious, it's a little shallower, a little bit more rapid. And, I'm usually unaware of it. But when I become aware of it, and this is something that it's just like muscle work, regular reps. I'm better at it now. I've gotten better at it now than I ever was before about recognizing when my body's tense. And I can relax. I have the tools now to use to calm myself down.
There's a thing that some actors can do that tells you they're a pretty good actor. If they can pull their forehead and ears back, like you see on like a horse or a dog, when something makes them startled, nervous, the ears go back.
Right.
We have those muscles, and I don't know that everybody can control them.
Right.
But like John Hamm, he is great at moments of crisis where all of a sudden his ears go back, his forehead goes up, and it gives you, if you're not looking for it, you don't know exactly what's happened, but you see that his face is shifted, and all of a sudden he's giving super upset signal.
Nonverbal communication is the vibe is very clear.
But knowing, how to being aware of your body and being able to do that. Kelly Preston acted in a movie, I think Twins with Schwarzenegger, and she complimented him on his control of his facial muscles, saying
one eyebrow can go up.
Yeah, that he, having been a bodybuilder, he knew all of his muscles, and he could do a lot with his face just by knowing what the muscles of his face were.
So. It's not Schwarzenegger. It's The Rock who can do
The Rock. Yeah, he's got
the one eyebrow.
Yeah, which is crazy that wrestling, throwing 300-pound guys around would make you a good actor, but it apparently does. Like John Cena is a really good, not only is he a good actor, but he's open to being ridiculous.
Yes.
Like I'd say that I think that most guys, who can bench press 300 pounds, might not be oriented to being goofy.
Right.
But he's able to do that. And actually, there was a family at my high school who scared the hell out of me and everybody else. The Nightenbach family. They lived up in the mountains. Like there were the city folk, and then there were the hill folk. And the hill folk could be kind of weird. And the Nightenbachs were a big family of boys. I guess there were maybe a big, I don't know. Anyway, people had bigger families back then. And the kids, when they hit 12 years old, I guess the dad said, you get a job or you wrestle. They had a wrestling room they built onto the house.
Wow.
And so the kids, all the boys were wrestling and probably earlier, because, if you got a big family of boys, they're going to be, and they were gigantic, wrestlers. And then I joined, I sucked up my fear and I joined a gym. And, I was afraid of the gym because there was always a Nightenbach on the front porch resting between sets. And this scared me, but I finally went in and I joined, and I found out those guys are kind of goofballs. Like they, when you're a big guy and you're eating a lot of food, you make big duties. And these guys were always like, come here, come see what I made. And they go, it goes around the bowl 2.5 times. And I'm like, well, okay, these guys still scare me, but they're funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it comes from a self-confidence, and maybe I don't know. Never having been a big guy, but I do think that there is something about the idea of accepting yourself, whoever you are, whether you're a big guy or a little guy, coming to terms with that, so that you're not trying to be something you're not. And I think this again is an exercise in self-will, in the sense that you can. And we used to say this comment that it's like, if you're born small, say short, and you can carry a grudge all your life, or you can choose to accept it and make the best of it, and use it to your advantage whenever possible. Or and again, if you become more spiritually uplifted, your vibration is higher, your height doesn't matter.
Yeah, I have height issues.
Uh-huh.
I'm at most 5'10.5". I say 5'11". I
Uh-huh.
used to wear cowboy boots, which got me to 6 foot.
Uh-huh.
I used to be a bigger guy too. I used to, have a lot more muscle. I bounced bars. I wasn't totally bouncer size, but I was adequate.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lost a ton of weight, not always on purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really bothers me. And I'm like, should I take freaking testosterone like RFK Jr. to get some more money? And no, like, look at RFK Jr. always looks like he's like 2 minutes away from having a stroke. He's super red and puffy, and his voice is strangled. He not a healthy looking guy.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, but I struggle with my smallness. I don't fill out the sleeves of my T-shirts the way I used to. And
yeah.
And they talk about everything is all pro. We were talking about this before the show started. Everybody wants seniors to frickin' eat a ton of protein. So I've been trying to eat more. I add protein to my coffee. I drink smoothies. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. And I've also been focused on protein as well, just because it seems to be indicated, to be good for you. Yeah, but anything it becomes a chore to do, I have to think about why I'm doing it. Again, it comes down to a question of choice, So in the discussion of do we have free will or not, I'm still coming down to yes, but we often don't use it. We often are unaware of our ability to use it. And we often apply it in a way that it's not meant to be applied. If you're using your will for egoic reasons and to try to create certain outcomes, you're going to be frustrated most of the time. You'll get what you think you want quite often, but the times that you don't know, you may not handle it too well. It may have negative consequences on your self-esteem, on your physical well-being, and this is because you're misapplying the power of choice that was freely given to you. And when you are more attuned to the forces that are flowing around us, they're out beyond our control. We can't do anything about them. This is the part that I agree with in terms of the free will. And these are larger forces than my will is. And when I can attune to them, I can go with their flow. And when I'm at odds with them, I tend to suffer negative consequences.
So I don't believe in free will, but I do believe in will. And yeah, I often fail to exercise adequate will or attention when I'm out with my wife. Like, and a nice butt goes by. Like, can I stop myself from looking at it? And most of the time I can, but I still get busted because my wife's like, "You're trying not to look at that butt." And it's so dumb because the butts you're presented with in everyday life are so much so much more variable in quality than the butts that have been put up on the internet for being good butts. It's such a waste of mental power that my butt radar is always going. It's like, just calm down. And like, there's a time for looking at butts, and it's after your wife has gone to bed. You can go on the internet.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I have a struggle with will every night. I'll end up. My wife's gone to bed at about 9 o'clock, and then I stay up for another few hours. And there's a really comfy couch, in front of the TV with a really comfy blanket.
Uh-huh.
And like, I have a fight every night. Like, can I get off the couch and go to bed where it's a much better place to sleep and it's next to my wife, or am I gonna take a stupid nap before I go to sleep?
Uh-huh.
And it's like, a lot of times, like, I don't know, 60% of the time I fail to get off the couch.
Okay.
And
All right. We're out of time, Rick, but
right.
we're gonna come back to that. Maybe not online, but there's a room for willpower there, and because what's good for you, but we'll talk about that again. So thank you so much for spending the time with me today and talking about and read the questioner's name one more time. It was David.
Let me pull it. It's Dave Bryant.
Dave Bryant. Okay. Well, thank you for the question, Dave. And I will see you soon. This has been episode 11.
All right.
Okay. We have one more episode coming up. Bye-bye. That was Rick Rosner, Emmy-nominated writer, who is critical of himself to the extent that I can relate to. And one of the things that we want to encourage people to do is to be more compassionate to themselves. But this has been Eade IT with James Eade. And I want to tell you that whatever you're addicted to, there's a chance for recovery. Every human being has the power and potential to recover. So when I can take